Aaron Rodgers might be, at this point, and this is saying something, the most self-centered athlete we have. Might be. He's in the running. He might be the single most. And my theory is Aaron Rodgers, of course, fancies himself an intellect, fancies himself some type of world's most interesting man, fancies himself as somebody people should either look up to, be impressed by, learn from, what have you. That's the first part of truly kind of being an egomaniac and self-centered, is feeling like you're so important people need to pay attention to you. But even more than that is that he actively draws attention, I think, and this is some real pop psychologist laid down on the couch for me, D.A. I think he does this to fulfill the void in Super Bowl championships. It's unavoidable, it is inarguable, that for all of Aaron Rodgers' greatness, the last 4 years have actually been defined by his failure in the biggest moments. I don't need to go back over the hit list, but I will. 2 seed in San Francisco. They get boat raced by the Niners in 2019, and he's terrible. Now, granted, the Packers' run defense was also torched, but he was terrible in that game. It's a blowout by the second quarter. He's openly frustrated with his team, with himself, etc. 2020, he's the 1 seed. Gets beat at home by Tom Brady. Pedestrian game against Brady and the Buccaneers at Lambeau. 2021, the 1 seed again. They get beat on a miserable offensive night at Lambeau by Garoppolo and the Niners. And then last year, win and in against the Lions at home at Lambeau, and Rodgers again pedestrian. That is inarguable. That is the deets. That are the facts. Dem's the facts, as they say. And I think because Mahomes is collecting championships and Brady has all of those titles, and Rodgers can only point to 1 Super Bowl trip more than a decade ago, how he fills his importance internally is through attention. Because this whole sleep thing, this whole cave thing, is a new level of attention drawn. We've had a lot of players do the, maybe I'll retire, maybe I'll come back. All right, fine. Aaron Donald said that. Sean McVay said that. Brett Favre said that. We do this. Doing it every offseason, well, now you're in Favre territory, and that's what we have from Rodgers. But Rodgers also creating public friction all over the place is definitely a sign of drawing and creating attention. He has created friction publicly with his coach, with his GM, with his teammates. And now we're doing the same song and dance about will I, won't I don't know, I've got a decision to make. And then the cave. The cave thing is really amazing when you really break it down. Forget if you think it's some type of hippy-dippy silliness. There might be a real quality to this. I mean, I could understand it if you just think about it logistically. You know, we are attached to our phones. We are constantly in a state of distraction. Media, including myself, trying to get your attention all of the time. You're inundated by sounds, by videos, by social media, by your phone, by the television, by the radio. It is all built. The whole apparatus in 2023 in society is built to get your attention. We need your attention right here, right now. So to put that all away and to go on a retreat is very healthy. If you just put your phone down for an hour a day, that's healthy. If you just charge your phone in the other room at night when you sleep, that's healthy. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that what he did, totally detaching, it's the same as if you went to a cabin in the woods and said, I'm leaving my phone at home. It's the same if you go on a fishing trip, a hiking trip. If you go and get a massage and you're just like, the phone is off, it's in my car, or the phone is left at home, there is a value there. But the whole thing about the cave is silence. That's the whole bit. That when you're in darkness and you shut off all of the lights and you have nothing that you can see, it's supposed to be the solitude that you need for clarity. Now, for somebody who's aware of the need for silence and solitude, and it is extremely valuable. If you think about it, so rarely are you in the middle of true silence. It is very hard to come by. If you live in a neighborhood and you can hear your neighbors, you hear your cars on the street outside. If you're at the office and you can hear people talking, it's very, very hard. You go to a park and hear people talking. To get true silence, getting into like the middle of nature, out on a boat, true silence. Even that, you can hear waves lapping, you can hear birds chirping. So this true silence is certainly interesting and intriguing. But if you were truly searching for solitude and for true silence, and you understood stillness as a virtue, why would you be talking about it so much? And basically using a megaphone to tell everybody how silent it is. It is the complete opposite. Aaron Rodgers has done multiple interviews with Pat McAfee about going into darkness and silence. And then the moment he comes out, he does it again with a different podcast, with a different show, with a different host. Think about how those two things really don't jive. You understand this value of silence and stillness and solitude, and I need to find that for clarity. And to then explain to everybody by yelling through a megaphone, because he didn't just do it on his own. He has to tell everybody all about it all of the time. He's amazing. He's amazing in the amount of attention he desires and basically needs. If Rodgers said to himself, look, this is a huge decision. I might retire and that's the end of my career. I might need to leave the Packers. That's a huge change in my life. I truly need silence to get to that point, to get true clarity and to understand where my mind and my heart is at. You could easily do that and not tell anybody. We didn't need to know he went to the cave. But not only did he need to detail what he was doing on his biggest stage, the McAfee show, he then comes out and explains what he did. I mean, he's one of a kind. I'm not even going to get into the hypocrisy of how he complains about attention, but just the idea that you need clarity through silence, but then create noise. That's all he does, is create noise and then say, but I need silence. He was on the Aubrey Marcus podcast yesterday, which was 1 hour and 41 minutes. And I can tell you, 7 minutes in, I started rolling my eyes. Both guys got their shoes off and their socks off. This type of thing. And we're sitting down in a perfectly well-lit room, and two guys just shooting the bleep. Everybody's shoes are off. Everybody's socks are off, looking like yogis, talking about spirituality. Okay. All right. Here is Aaron Rodgers.
After 5 or 6 hours of kind of going through that, I found a really nice sweetness and comfort in the reality that I was sitting with that day, which was retirement and what that would look like. So a really beautiful ending to that, but a lot of really difficult contemplations around all this insecurity and fear that came up of like, what happens when they turn the lights off to your career? What happens when somebody says, oh, you used to be Aaron Rodgers, right? Well, I still am. I don't feel like I have anything left to accomplish, like for people like show you like, hey, I can do this, like, or I got to win another Super Bowl so people, think of me in a, higher sense. Like, no, I don't need to do any of that. Yeah. I love playing, and that's a good enough reason.
And those are all totally fair assessments of oneself. And you could, if that's just the way that Aaron Rodgers explained it once he made a decision, be like, that makes total sense. Nothing left to prove. Who am I after this? I came to some type of understanding and peace. Hey, great. But explaining it before you do it so that then when you do it, you have to then explain it again is just squeezing this towel for every drop of water. He then went into how he's a 2-time COVID MVP. He cited this multiple times. He wanted to say I was a 2-time COVID MVP. I guess suggesting that the COVID years were tougher. That by being the MVP those seasons, he overcame more, I guess. It was a weird way to kind of frame his... But basically he was saying everybody thought I was done. And then I came back and I was a 2-time COVID MVP. Okay. I'm still at a loss of why we need hour to 2-hour conversations about making a decision that hasn't been made. I mean, talk about just like stringing this thing along. And the only thing I could think of is if you're going to tell everybody in long form how I'm going to make a decision, and then you come out of that and discuss in long form the process that you went through to make a decision, and we still have the decision to go, how much more does there need to be?
There is life, and then there is football. And the reason I set it up like that was because I never wanted to be just a football player. Because I'm a smart guy who went on Jeopardy and won and hosted Jeopardy. And I'm interested in all these other things. And look how, don't, pigeonhole me as just a football player. I'm not a dumb jock. And I fought so hard for this, what seems now ridiculous way to differentiate my life or private life and my career. But what hit me in the darkness was that my life is football. My life and football are connected, and that's totally okay.
Okay. That's some real truth there. That's some real exposure to internal thoughts, and that's interesting. It's all interesting. But I just don't think you do this before you've made the decision. The Packers are waiting. The rest of the NFL is waiting. And I just think that the best way to approach this, if you're truly looking for some type of centeredness, is detaching from the part where you explain to the masses what you're doing and just do it. And then afterwards is where the explanation can come if you want it to come. But it's become excruciating. He did an hour and 41 minutes yesterday on not making a decision. I mean, Tom Brady, after he retired, gave us, 3 Instagram pages? And then when he retired the second time, gave us a 20-second Instagram clip? And he's far more interesting than Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers just spent an hour 41 explaining that he didn't make a decision. Or maybe he did, but he's waiting to announce it. You couldn't make it up. And that's why I think that he is the single most self-centered athlete we've ever had. Who would think anybody wants to hear hours upon hours of your process of making a decision without having made it? I mean, I couldn't get through the entire hour 41. I'm sorry. I could not do it. I wish I could do it as a responsibility to you guys. I couldn't do it. I'm like, oh man, this is This is torture listening to this. You want to pump your buddy's podcast, Aubrey Marcus, who doesn't even really need it. That's fine. He has like 500,000 followers on YouTube. He's doing quite well. But why we needed this before the decision speaks to a desire, a need that has to be fed of people noticing me. People have to notice what I'm going through, how I'm going through it, and I'm going to explain. And yeah, if you do every interview request and you stay as long as they want you to stay, you'll get fed that because there's plenty of interview requests for Aaron Rodgers. And you might say to yourself, well, D.A., you're complaining about how this is excruciating, but you've just spent 17 minutes discussing it. And that is true. That is absolutely true. That is not lost on me. Where I come at it is, from a football standpoint, it's significant because he's a Hall of Famer and one organization is going to have to move on from him and have a new quarterback, the Packers. Inevitably, I think he's leaving. And I don't think he's retiring. And so another team is going to then invest in Aaron Rodgers. That's the football part of things. But from a sports and culture standpoint, where Rodgers stands, he is fascinating from this realm. He is desperate to be talked about. And that comes from an insecurity of which he might not realize. But it's wild how desperate he is for it. And I suppose all I am doing is indulging Aaron Rodgers, so that's on me.